Ladies and gentlemen, when we find tremendous candidates, I like to give them an opportunity to speak on this program, because they're not going to get many other opportunities in the radical left Democrat Party media. We need to take the Senate. We need to take the Senate with solid people. And one of those is Dave McCormick. I've become very friendly with Dave McCormick, as have my family members. I feel like we know him very, very well. We saw him again at CPAC over the weekend, where he did a fantastic job, and he was interviewed by my stepson, David. He's just solid, common sense, and he's running against Bob Casey, who got elected because his father was extremely popular in the state of Pennsylvania, and people keep thinking they're still voting for the father. But many of you have never heard of Bob Casey. Many people in Pennsylvania have never heard of Bob Casey, and many people don't even know what his voice sounds like, because he's a phony and a fraud. He just does what the Democrat Party tells him to do, and worse. And I've asked Dave McCormick to come on the program to tell us what's going on in this crucial Senate race, crucial, in Pennsylvania. And this guy, Bob Casey. Dave McCormick, how are you, my friend?
Hey, Mark, how are you? Thanks for having me.
It's a great pleasure. So Bob Casey is not only utterly ineffective and incompetent, he's worse than that, isn't he?
It's truly scary, because if you looked at what he's done in 18 years, you will not find a single piece of legislation where he has led. He has kept his head down. You know, I tease my mom was born in Punxsutawney, and he kind of reminds me of Punxsutawney Phil. He comes out once every 6 years and runs for re-election, but he hasn't taken any leadership. But you would think, or you need to understand that not taking leadership has been truly dangerous, because he's voted 98% of the time with Joe Biden, and he's embraced some of the most left, progressive, crazy ideology that the Democrats have put forth. So when you look at inflation and the wild spending out of control, $34 trillion of debt, you can thank Bob Casey. When you look at the wide open border and the fact that Bob Casey has resisted any restrictions, any sending felons back to their countries, he's resisted any of the steps that President Biden should have taken a long time ago. Thank Bob Casey. When you think about crime in Philadelphia, your hometown, which is raging out of control, you can thank Bob Casey, who was in favor of defunding the police, and after George Floyd really made accusations about broad-scale racism in the uniform in our law enforcement agencies. And when you look at the war, which I'm going to give a speech tomorrow on this, Mark, when you look at the war on energy, if there's one thing you could do to unlock the economy of Pennsylvania, to really put Pennsylvania back where it should be as one of the leading economies in our great country, all sorts of restrictions and regulations, you can thank Bob Casey. So he has been very detrimental to the people of Pennsylvania, because he hasn't shown leadership, but he's voted for all the crazy liberal ideologies that have taken us in the wrong direction.
He has not been a leader in condemning Hamas and what's been taking place in the Middle East, and the Biden administration now undermining the state of Israel. He's not been a leader in securing the border and all the illegal immigrants pouring into Pennsylvania, into the cities and the rural areas of Pennsylvania, the crime, the fact that affects the labor market in that state. He's not been a leader on any issue of any kind. As you point out, he throws in with the left of the Democrat Party. But what about this issue with one of these hardcore Marxist leftists, I would call her, this Representative Summer Lee? What happened there? Who is she?
It's a perfect example of the lack of moral clarity and moral leadership. Summer Lee is a sitting congressman. She's associated with the Squad. She has spewed anti-Semitic tropes, has affiliated herself with radicals that have celebrated October 7th and the horrible, barbaric tragedy that happened from terrorists on that day, killing innocent people in Israel, and she has been really the leader of some of the worst things that our Squad members of Congress had said opposed to Israel, and Bob Casey endorsed her. Bob Casey endorsed her last time around, and he has not, despite some of the horrific things she said, he's not pulled back his endorsement. He's not held her to account. And most recently what happened, she was going to speak at this organization, CARE, which, as you know, is a radical Muslim group where the leadership This isn't some person affiliated with. This is
it's
the
Hamas.
Leadership. Right. Hamas has spoken out in favor of Hamas, spoken out, celebrating October 7th. Summer Lee is the keynote speaker. And so I see this, and I, among others, call out and say, this is Summer Lee should resign immediately, and Bob Casey should stand tall with moral clarity. Of course, finally, Summer Lee withdraws from speaking. Bob Casey is 100% silent. And that's what you get with this guy. This is not someone who's going to stick his head up. When Liz McGill, when the kids on Penn's campus were hiding in their rooms, the Jewish kids, because they had every right to be fearful of being harmed on the campus of Penn, when Liz McGill testified, again, I was one of the first ones to say, get rid of Liz McGill. Bob Casey, silent. That's the kind of leader he is, which is no leader at all.
So he does two things. Number one, he's relatively silent. Number two, when he does speak up or act, he's hard left. He's Absolutely. More left than Fetterman now, isn't he?
Yeah, this is remarkable because I'm sure that I probably disagree with 80% of what John Fetterman believes. But when John Fetterman speaks with moral clarity on Israel, which he has, I say, listen, this is bigger than Democrats and Republicans. This is about who's going to stand up and call out evil. And John Fetterman did. And John Fetterman, to my surprise, said the border is an absolute crisis and has to be dealt with. That's exactly opposite of what Bob Casey's done. Bob Casey doesn't stand up or stand out in any way. And that's why I'm going to beat him, Mark. And you know me well enough to know I'm not a kind of guy that beats his chest and overpromises. But Pennsylvanians are ready for change. 80% of them believe the country's headed in the wrong direction. 70% of the people that I've polled can't think of a single thing, not a single thing, that their three-term senator has done. They want leadership, they want change, and frankly, they're terrified. They're frightened that their country's slipping away. They're frightened that we have terrorists that are not only attacking Israel, but attacking American troops. They're terrified of China rattling its saber, and they want common-sense leadership that's going to take the country back in the right direction, and that's why I feel the momentum on the ground. That's why I feel lots of support, and that's why I'm going to beat this guy.
Now, you did something that's rare as an old Pennsylvania. I can tell you the Pennsylvania Republican Party is all over the place. I remember when Reagan was running in 76 and 80, I backed Reagan. They were backing everybody but Reagan. They said he couldn't win. Of course, he won in a landslide. But still, you've got these bedroom communities. You have mining communities. You've got oil communities. You've got all kinds of communities. You've united the entire Republican Party of Pennsylvania behind your candidacy. And I want to talk about how you did that. And I want to talk about, that the Democrats will do everything they can to win in Pennsylvania. Some of the most important lawsuits that were raised with the court came out of Pennsylvania in 2020. Are you prepared to deal with this? Talking to David McCormick, the Republican nominee, will be the Republican nominee for the U.S. Senate in Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania has elected Republicans in the past. It's an uphill battle. The media is hard left. You got Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, two big cities, and other cities. The suburbs, in many cases, have turned Democrat, but you still have strongholds, Republicans, strongholds, blue-collar Democrats who support Republicans. And so Dave McCormick is traveling the state, town by town, small towns, larger towns, cities, whatever he has to do. It's a significant state. Size may not be Montana, but it's a lot of work to get to all these different areas. So you united the Republican Party, and you're going to have to be ready for all kinds of tricks by the governor and, their boards of elections there and all the rest. So tell us about this.
Well, Pennsylvania is, as you say, it couldn't be more important because it's a battleground state that will likely determine the presidency, as you know. I think both President Trump's campaign and the Biden campaign would say Pennsylvania is critical, and this is the seat for the Senate that could flip the majority. And so the stakes could not be higher. And the reason that I'm going to build the coalition and win this election is number one, the first thing I told you, which is 80% of Pennsylvanians think the country's heading in the wrong direction. And so I say on the campaign trail, wherever I go, and I go, as you said, to these small towns, I say, listen, if you want the status quo, I'm not your guy. If you want change, if you want somebody who's going to go to Washington and break some glass, if you want to get America back on track, I am your guy, and this is an election where people feel like they need change. Second, as you said, the Republican Party is united. It's united around the idea that we need to win. And I go from one part of the Commonwealth to the other, and I've got the parties endorse me, the congressional delegations, everybody from Scott Perry, who you know is former chairman of the Freedom Caucus, to Brian Fitzpatrick, who's in Bucks County, across the political spectrum, have said, we got to win. And my argument to them is, hey, listen, you're not going to agree with everything I say. Nobody is. 80% is what you're going to probably agree with. And by the way, that's higher than my wife. I don't know about you, Mark, but 80% is pretty good. And so I believe I've united the party because they got to know me last time. We lost a tough election in 2022 with Mehmet Oz, who beat me in the primary, lost to Fetterman. And people say they can't have a repeat of that. We've got to win. The third thing, as I said to you, is I've got an incredibly weak opponent. He's got the Casey name. I agree with that. My dad worked for his father. His father was a leader. I didn't agree with a lot of his father said, but his father was a leader. Bob is not a leader, and people need leadership. And because he's voted 98% of the time with Joe Biden, that's the best example of someone who's not an independent voice, someone who's not fighting for Pennsylvania. We've got to deal with the election fraud issues and the mail-in ballot issues, and there's lots of great work to be done to close the gap on mail-in ballots, and there's an effort to do that, and the party's united around doing that. But there's also a need to make sure we do everything we can to make sure on Election Day we get a fair shake. We've got to have election observers. We've got to have legal teams deployed. We've got to have cameras overseeing lock boxes. There's a lot of work to be done now to enhance the integrity of the election, and that's my biggest fear. If I get a fair shake on Election Day and I run the kind of campaign I can run, I'm going to win. And I think we're going to win as Republicans up and down the ticket, and it couldn't be more important for the country.
You're a veteran. Tell America a little bit about that.
Well, I grew up in rural Pennsylvania, in Bloomsburg, and I grew up playing football and wrestling in little towns like Shikellamy and Shikshinny and North Schuylkill, and baled hay and trimmed Christmas tree. I had a great upbringing, and wrestling got me to West Point, and I was the co-captain of the wrestling team at West Point. I wrestled all 4 years, and then went to the 82nd Airborne Division, where I was a lieutenant, a platoon leader, and an executive officer per company. And the 82nd was the first unit to deploy to the Gulf for the first Gulf War. And so I spent almost a year over there, was in the first wave of troops going into Iraq. And I got to see firsthand American power in action. I got to see firsthand good decisions and bad decisions. I got to see firsthand how important it is that America have strength, economic strength, military strength, but also how important it is that it use it carefully. And we've seen some cases since then where it hasn't been used carefully. And it gave me a profound commitment to duty, honor, country, and service. And that's what I keep coming back to. I went, just to give you an example of this, I went to Israel. We've talked about this right after Christmas. And I saw firsthand the barbarism that had happened with Hamas coming across the border, butchering communities, children, children watching their parents be killed, families burned, decapitations, just brutality. And I spent time with the IDF, and I watched them and the operations they were doing in terms of rooting out the terrorists, and I have a better sense than most of how difficult that is, going building by building, street by street, room by room, and then imagine a whole city underneath that city where you've got to root out these terrorists. And so I have an appreciation for what that takes. I have an appreciation for how important it is that we eradicate that evil. You can't live side by side 600 meters across the border from somebody who wants to slit your throat. But because of my experience, I can go there and actually weigh in on these issues with some credibility and come back and show the moral clarity that Bob Casey hasn't shown. And that's the kind of senator I'll be, Mark. I don't want to be a senator for the hell of it. I don't want to be a senator to be a senator. I want to be a senator to change the direction of the country. It's only worth doing if there's real change coming, and that's the kind of leadership I would bring.
And you bring all this business background, you bring the background of having served in a war, you bring all this to the fore. You're going to spend an enormous amount of your own money. You're spending an enormous amount of your time. You and your wife have, what, 5 children? 5 daughters?
Six daughters.
Oh, my Lord, 6 daughters?
Yeah, 6 people say, isn't politics tough? And I said, listen, once you've lived with 6 teenage daughters, there's not... You've got some armor on. Yeah, listen, here's the way I think about it. Honestly, you've met my wife. My wife and I both, started with very little, and both have had remarkable American dreams. You've had an American dream. We are blessed to live in this great country and have everything it has to offer, and that's slipping away. And I couldn't live with myself if I didn't do my part. And so I'm putting all the chips on the table. My reputation, this is brutal. You get attacked all the time. It's, complete lies are told about you. I'm putting my reputation, my family, I'll put lots of money into the campaign because I think it's that important. I'm putting all the chips on the table because I think if we don't have people put their chips on the table, we're gonna lose our country, and it's that simple for me. And I'm honored to do it. I'm honored to do it, and I feel optimistic about our future if we can put some good folks in place, and I'd like to be one of them.
Well, I'm proud to know you, and I want folks all over the country, especially in Pennsylvania, but all over the country. The United States Senate, as a group of senators, determines very much where this country is going to go. So we have to be involved in every one of these races. And Dave McCormick is one of the races that I have noted that we need to be involved in. You can go to DaveMcCormickPA.com. That's DaveMcCormick PA.com. It's going to be on my social media. Again, DaveMcCormickPA.com. Anything you can do to help him, he's going to need, because Schumer, some of the unions, the Democrat Party, they don't want to lose this seat, do they, Dave?
They're coming. They're coming hard, and I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready for the fight. I'm ready to get America back on track. And as always, honored to be on your show, Mark. Thanks for having me. Thanks to your audience for listening in.
Look forward to having you back. God bless you, my friend.
Hey, God bless you. Thank you, sir.
You take care of yourself. He's a very unique candidate, very special candidate for a state like Pennsylvania. And my experience in Pennsylvania is the Republican Party is never united. But here it is. They want that seat. It could be a great pickup. Can you imagine replacing this guy, Casey, who almost none of you have ever heard of or heard from or know anything about? He's one of these under-the-radar senators who just votes hard left 99% of the time. We got to replace a jerk like that. It's very, very important as far as I'm concerned.